All right, it looks like it is 7 o'clock, so I will call the May 13th, 2025 Sylvan Township Board of Trustees regular meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If you'd like to stand and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's move on then to public comment. Each person has 3 minutes. If you would like to step forward and please state your name. Any public comment? Mike? Trenda? Yep, that's just for, that's,
This one. Okay. Let's play microphone swap. Okay, Trenda Eversole, Sager Road. What was that?
It's on.
Okay, yep. Test. We're
That's
on.
better.
There you go.
You have to get closer to it.
Okay, we'll get closer. We'll get some amp out of this. Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments real quick. I know that you guys are working on the Bush Road culverts and stuff. You're going over that kind of stuff for the roads. I'd like to just comment on the southeastern part of Sylvan Township. Sager Road and Jerusalem Road are the only 2 miles of road that we have in that whole section of the township. And my road, Sager Road, is terrible. And we have so many people that complain about it. They have cold patched it, and it does nothing but tear it up even more. So I'd like to put my vote in to do some more work on that, because if you look at it, you don't have 52, you don't have Scioto Church, you don't have any of those roads are all county roads. We only have 2 miles of roads to take care of that are pavement, and they have been neglected for years. So I'd like to put my bid in on that. I like to see that you guys are working on the water treatment plant, the security around that. I hope that you guys get the alert system going with that, because I think that is a great idea to implement for the people in case there's a boil alert or whatever, so that we look a little bit more professional in our township, taking care of our people that are actually on the system. If something happens, they alert them automatically. And I like that you guys are working on that. Sandra, you're working on the automatic payments. That's awesome. I like to see that happening. And other than that, I'm excited to hear what's going on with the proposed 425 agreement and all that kind of stuff. But good job, guys.
thank you. All right, anyone else? Mike?
Good evening, Mike Van Gore, resident on Spruce Run Drive. I'd like to talk about the proposed 425 agreement. I mean, we are still kind of living in the shadow of the water tower, so to speak. And I'm not opposed to this by any means. I want to make that clear, but I was hoping that there might be a little bit more detail of where the water and the sewer servicing this area is going to be coming from, and if there's any benefit to the residents of the township. Not that that would be, certainly foremost in the agreement, but it'd be nice if there were some component of that. Maybe, I don't know if it's coming from the water tower, if there's a way to alleviate the burden that's on the township residents with the water tower so far, but really just asking for maybe a little bit more detail as far as where the water and sewer are proposed to be servicing coming from within the township. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Patrick?
Patrick Ziske, Sylvan Township resident. I want to say a few words about the proposed 425 agreement, of course. First of all, it's a rather complex legal document for a layman like me and for many of the residents in the township. We tried to go through it as fast as we could. It's only been a few days since it was released, and I'm not sure it's well enough understood by everybody yet. To the best of my understanding, though, it looks like basically a good idea, except there are some things that I'm concerned about, and I did write a letter to the board today, which you probably have. I really want to make sure it doesn't commit the township to a course of action that would result in a large expenditure of township funds. Maybe it's a way of reading it, you know, maybe I'm reading too much into it or not reading enough into it or something. But I do wonder where the money is going to come from. And if the money doesn't come from any place else, does this document require the township to somehow commit funds, either by debt or by direct expenditure? Not by direct expenditure from what I see, but possibly by debt or by pledging something, the full faith and credit of the township or something like that. That really has to be clarified. We got burned so badly with the water tower before. And that's how we got into it. We borrowed a lot of money. We had a special assessment district, just like this document says we can. And we thought everything was fine. Something went wrong. And of course, what went wrong was very complicated. We're not likely to repeat the exact same thing, but when the township is ultimately on the hook, something can happen. At the very least, the development that you plan to, that you think is going to happen maybe won't, right? For a long time. And then there's no money to pay for anything. That's possible. I don't expect that's going to happen. I actually think everything's going to go fine, but there need to be a strong, clear assurance in here that we're not on the hook if something doesn't go fine. And I really applaud the board for rushing to come up with something in the face of a possible threat of annexation. That was really important to do. But it's also possible to rush too much. And we've only seen this for like 3 days. So let's make sure it's fully vetted out. I have some other miscellaneous comments in my letter, which were less important too. But let's make sure it's fully vetted out in public so everybody knows what the township is required to commit to and what the township's not required to commit to. I know it says in here, if there's any breach of this agreement, Lima Township could seek legal action against it. So it's important. We can't just, if we're agreeing to something, we're going to have to fulfill it. So let's be just totally clear about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, anyone else? Cindy? Hello.
Cindy Jabara, Sylvan Township resident. I would just like to support Patrick's letter. I read it. I thought it was well crafted and it had a lot of good points. Some of the things that I was thinking of as well with regard to at what point would we need to get voter approval for something, what that number looks like. And it's just what happens if, right? That's where my head goes because of the past. And I know Mr. Thal has done a great job in putting this together for us. And I'm really happy that we're moving forward with something like this, but particularly because we don't have all the engineering costs and those things put together. That's really, just didn't want to get the cart before the horse. I know you've all thought of that, but I'm just saying it out loud. So thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
Right, anyone else? Any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we will move on to approval of the agenda. I would like to add one item. It was supposed to be included in the board packet and unfortunately was missed. I would like to add consideration of trust and agency amendments to the agenda. So that would go under new business as the last agenda item.
I'd like to add a couple items too. I'd just like to have a brief time to update the board and the public on the roofing project. There's no motion for that one, just an update. But then I do want to present a motion for adding snow cleats or snow bars for snow protection on our roof.
Isn't it, it's on the agenda already?
Oh, is it? Okay, it's on there. Okay.
Yep.
So
why don't you update us when we have that agenda item, Township Hall snow, roof snow protection, just give us that update then, if you would.
Okay, and there's one other item. I'd like to have the board consider a recording secretary for the zoning board zoning board of appeals.
So can we then consider recording secretary for zoning board of appeals?
Yeah.
But will you then add your update to the agenda item for the roof cleats?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the only two items that we will be adding is consideration of trust and agency amendments and consideration of recording secretary for zoning board of appeals.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Thank you, Sandy.
Turtle second.
All right, so I have that motion from Sandy, supported by Kurt. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The agenda is approved as amended. We will then move on to approval of the April 15th, 2025 regular meeting minutes and the April 16th, 2025 special meeting and closed session minutes. Doug has provided us with. Met him, please. Yeah, thank you. All right. So Doug has provided us with the closed session meeting minutes, and then the regular meeting minutes are in the board pack. I am good with the closed session. I'm going to hand those back to Doug. If anybody, when they're done with closed session, just hand them back to Doug.
On this closed session. Says I was absent, is that true? Seems like I remember being there.
You were, oh, can you turn on your mic also?
Yes, it is on.
There you go. Find where I put those minutes.
The closed session. You're looking at the closed session minutes?
Mm-hmm. I'll just look at these. Present, it says COSEC arrived at 1:34 PM. Doesn't say you're absent. You just were absent for the vote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right. You did leave before. Right before we came out of closed session. I think you had to go. Okay. All right.
That clarifies it. Yep, thank you.
Take this, Kurt, when you're done too. All right, so then I would look for a motion to approve the April 15th regular meeting minutes and the April 16th special meeting and closed session meeting minutes. Thank you, Sandy.
Turtle second.
Thank you, Kurt. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The meeting minutes are approved as presented. We will then move on to approval of the consent agenda, which includes the presentation of bills, correspondence, committee reports, board reports, department reports.
I would like to bring up one of the invoices, which was the $10,000 for wave service, the Washington area. What is it, Value Express?
Correct.
I would like to see that pulled from the consent agenda and put up as a motion at the end of the meeting because it is a large amount. I know we budgeted it for it, but we never approved that as a board together.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if the rest of the board feels that's necessary. Is one person enough to pull it, or?
We'll go back and have to approve or amend the agenda again.
Okay.
All right, so you want to pull out that invoice for wave,
Yes.
and we're going to then add that to the agenda under new business. So then I would ask Sandy, where are you? Sandy and Kurt, are you okay with that amendment?
Yes.
All right, we will do that then. We will pull that and amend the agenda to include invoice for wave then is the last agenda item. All right.
Then I've got some comments and questions on some of the reports. I don't think this will take very long, but Amanda, on your We're Water Authority.
What page are you on then?
Your memorandum,
Page is that?
that's page 16.
Okay.
Just, I think that was supposed to say for our meeting of May 13th.
Yep, thank you. No. Yes, correct the subject, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, May 13th, all right.
And then I just noticed in the light, is Aditi Fox here today?
Not.
Okay. I'm just curious about, she's mentioned that they talked about the executive order that diminished the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and if there's something the township or the community can do to help make up that. So that's just,
Not sure what you're looking at. Where are you?
okay, that's page 17 is her report. And that's the fourth paragraph down, starting with Lori Coriel. It says she discussed the impact of executive order on diminishing the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And so it's just, I think that's something that we need to investigate sometime in how that's impacting our library and its services. Page 24 on my report, maybe Sandy can shed some light on the budget item at the top. I know our target is 8.2%, and it's saying our revenue is at 0.5%. So is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is that
It's a normal
a
thing
normal thing? Okay.
because taxes aren't collected until November or December. And state shared revenue comes in every other month. So it's just a normal thing.
Okay, so it's just going to fluctuate and,
The first month of a fiscal year is very little activity of any kind.
okay. And then with the water fund, it's saying
Where are you, Doug?
on my report on page 24 at the top for the budget numbers. It's saying water fund to date revenue 18%. So that sounds like we're getting more than we anticipate that.
That 18% is going to, when I get done, gonna drop to 0 because the April bill is based on prior consumption, so it has to be backdated to March. And utility billing it bills quarterly, so you're not gonna see any real revenue in water until July.
Okay. And then the expenditures, it shows a positive number on here, but actually on the report on page 33, the revenue and expenditure report from BSNA, it's showing a negative 1.54%. I don't know if Pat edited that in my report, but how do we have a negative expenditure percentage on a budget?
Well, I can tell you it's coming from 591, 265, 820, building maintenance.
Right.
I don't know why that's a big giant negative number.
Okay.
We're gonna have to drill down and to see what has been miscoded or something. There's something off. Because an expense should never be a negative number.
Right. It's like we made money on it or something. It's a revenue now.
You figured out how to do that. Please let me know. I could use some help at home.
Okay. Also on my report on page 45, I just wanted to point out, I've added a lot of lines to our journal entry for our payroll, which each office now has the FICA expense. So that's a new item that'll be in our payroll report. And just a quick question, again, for Sandy on page 47. For the class investments, it's listed at 4.4%. Is that a fixed?
No,
so that,
It varies with the market.
okay. So we're somehow managing still a positive with all that's going on somehow.
Interest rates are still good.
All right.
Feds didn't drop them, which is great if you got money to invest, not so much if you're looking to borrow.
And then page 48, the next page, in Mike's DPW report, he was mentioning replacing or investigating the replacement of original pumps. That's the third item down at $25,000 each with install. Is that something that's been discussed, or is Mike going to bring that up? Okay,
That is discussed for the authority because it's sewer.
all right. Is that something we have a budget for currently, or we have to adjust for? Okay. All right.
Big ticket items in an enterprise fund are not budgetable. They're assets
Okay.
because the water and sewer are treated like businesses. So they don't, businesses, when they buy large ticket items, they record them as assets and then they depreciate them over time. So
Okay.
you don't budget for that in the normal sense of budgeting.
Okay.
Cash management, yes.
All right, thanks. And a final comment on page 50, on Scott's report about the zoning and planning commission. I just wanted to add a comment that with the Chrysler Proving Grounds, we did add a stipulation for their lighting for the parking lot. They had it at using LED bulbs at 5,000 Kelvin, and we requested that they readjust that to 3,000 Kelvin or less to reduce the light pollution impact, and they agreed to do that. So that's my final comments on that.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? All right, then I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda with, what do we pull out? With the wave invoice being pulled out.
So move.
Right? Motion from Doug, supported by Sandy. Any other discussion? Got that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, the consent agenda is approved as amended. All right, so we are going to move on to unfinished business, and we have none. So then we will move on to new business. And the first agenda item under new business is the public hearing for the proposed 425 agreement between Sylvan and Lima Townships. So what I'd like to do is have our attorney, Robert Thal, give us an introduction to this agenda item.
All right. Right, thank you. So I'm Rob Thal, I'm the township's legal counsel, and I've worked on numerous 425 agreements over the years. A 425 agreement is a conditional transfer of property between municipalities for economic development purposes. So what it does is it allows communities to join together and for a common goal for economic development. And in this case, we have a proposed 425 agreement between Sylvan Township and Lima Township. It regards an area south of I-94 between Freer Road and M52. And there's 3 properties in Lima Township. There's 5 properties in Sylvan Township in that strip of area. And what would happen is Lima Township would be transferring over their 3 parcels to Sylvan Township. Sylvan Township transfers over their 5 parcels to Lima Township. And it's just an effective way to create what we would have as an economic development project area. So all the parcels in the area would become this project area. And part of it is because Lima doesn't have sewer and water, we can provide those services to the Lima property. And then there are, there's different features of it. But one of the things that's important to understand is that the properties, when they transfer, they still retain certain aspects to them. It's not just a complete transfer over to Lima, complete transfer over to Sylvan. The 425 Act allows us to retain certain aspects of the property that we're transferring. So in the case of the Sylvan Township properties that we're transferring, the property would continue to remain under the ordinances, fire protection services, rules, regulations of Sylvan Township. All residents of the property, if there are any, would continue to vote in future elections as Sylvan Township residents during the term of the agreement, and they would be counted as Sylvan Township residents for purposes of any census or state revenue sharing. Sylvan Township would retain the power of taxation, and that's for both, the same thing goes for Lima on their properties. Now, what we're really transferring is to Lima Township, one of the things that we're doing by setting up this project area is we're creating a joint planning and zoning area. So one of the things that we're transferring is jurisdiction for joint planning and zoning, and also then property tax revenue. And I'll go into those in a little more detail. And then also for the Lima property, they're transferring the right to the township to provide them with sewer and water services in their township because they would not have it. So effectively what we do is we create this project area, and the project area is going to have a joint planning commission. The joint planning commission would be made up of one board member from the township, each township board, and 2 members from each planning commission. So it's going to have joint membership. And I'll address some of Patrick's questions that he had in his email. I thought well thought out, some good questions there. And so I'll address some of those, one of which is with the Joint Planning Commission. So there was a question raised as to, who has ultimate say in that joint area? Is it at the Planning Commission level or is it at the township board levels? And so what would happen is you set up the Joint Planning Commission. It functions just like a regular planning commission. It's joint, but it really only has recommending powers. So in terms of it would do like a mini zoning for that area, a mini master plan for it, and a zoning ordinance for that area, both of which would go to the legislative bodies for approval. So the parties, this is all a collaborative effort. So it requires both Lima Township and Sylvan Township to work together on these things. But ultimately you want to come up with a joint zoning ordinance for the area, but those will be decided by the legislative bodies of each of the, and I do know that, I could, and we'll talk about this at the end, is if we want to make a few revisions to address some of these issues, we could add a provision into the joint planning. It's an exhibit here in the document, but I could add another paragraph that just references the fact that the master plan and the zoning ordinances each need to be approved by the public bodies. To me, there's things that I kind of know, but when somebody raises issues, it's good that if somebody reads it, those issues, they can understand it. They know those issues are covered. I know they're covered, but I don't want people arguing over it 5 or 6 years down the road. So I think it might be a good idea to add to the language that just says that the master plan that would be for that area and the zoning ordinance would have to still be legislatively approved. So then, we go into the provision of services in the area. Part of it, and the main part of this whole project, is because Sylvan Township has sewer and water services, they can extend the properties for development. And again, Patrick made some good points in terms of, hey, I want to make sure that it's not forcing Sylvan Township to expend all sorts of money to extend lines out there and improve their systems and do whatever might need to be done to bring the sewer and water to the property. And I think that's a good comment. When I read it, I understand a certain thing in here that we're not, but it could always be clarified a little bit better, so that anybody that reads it will know, that the township is not on the hook for extending out lines to it, or doesn't have to bond if it doesn't want to bond. It doesn't have to do special assessment if it doesn't want to do a special assessment. All these things are just tools in the toolbox that we don't know how it's going to play out till we get a developer. You might get a big developer who can just do the project they want to do there. You might get a developer that has certain needs that can be met in other ways. And I can talk about those too. But in Article 3, paragraph 3 of the contract, it talks about neither township shall be required to expend funds for the extension of public sewer and water within the economic development project area. Instead, the cost of extensions may be paid by the developer by grant or outside financing through special assessment, bonding, and other lawful mechanisms. Sylvan Township shall have the authority to levy special assessments or bonds for sewer and water infrastructure within the area. So, I mean, I could again make some minor revisions to the language of that section just to better clarify.
What would you propose?
I would say, that the township, that neither township would be required. I said in the area, but I would probably say extending lines to the area or in the area. So neither township's responsible for, I want to make it clear, we're not responsible for extending it to the property either. And then also in the last section, Sylvan Township shall have the authority, I would say, but not the obligation to levy special assessments or issue bonds for sewer and water infrastructure within the development area. So making it just clear to anybody that reads it that, hey, if I'm a developer, I'm looking at this, I know I have to figure out how I'm going to fund this thing. I can approach the townships about different funding mechanisms, but when it comes down to it, we'll provide the services, but we're not on the hook for paying for those services. And there's a number of different ways that, these things can be looked at. The state and federal government look they look favorably on communities that join together to provide services. So there's been a big push if you're asking for grants to build things, build sewer and water systems. There's been a big push if there's regionalization, if there's cooperation between communities, especially say one that doesn't have any utilities, to reach out and provide them utilities in this joint kind of arrangement. And so if you apply for a grant, you get extra points in that grant process if you have a collaborative project. So it may help in that avenue at the state or federal level. There's also new procedures, and I could go into that just a little bit. I think it was about 2023, they changed the Brownfields Act. So it used to be just for properties in these contaminated areas, normally industrial, commercial kind of developments. And what they did is I think it was 2023, they expanded out the ability to use the Brownfield statute. It's not for residential developments. So, they'll say a residential brownfield development, it's just using the Brownfield statute, but it's not, it have really anything to do with contaminated property per se. It could be on any project. So if somebody came in with a residential development under this new statute, they could ask the Brownfield Authority, they could submit a plan to the Brownfield Authority for what we call tax increment financing. So what that means is the developer is going to come in, they're going to pay for their whole infrastructure. So say they're going to build out an $80 million residential and apartments, whatever it might be. And say their costs into the infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, maybe $15 million in infrastructure development for the property. They can then capture the taxes that would be levied on the increase in value. So the property maybe right now is worth $1 million as just land. Everything that increases in value. So if they build this complex here and it's worth, say, $50 million, they can capture the tax on that $50 million. So they're capturing the school's taxes, they're capturing the county's taxes, they're capturing the township's taxes. They capture all the taxes, and then over, say, a 10-year period or so, they can pay themselves back. So the Brownfield Authority captures the taxes, they give it to the developer to pay for the infrastructure costs. So the developer put in all this money to, roads, sewer, water, they can collect these tax revenues and pay themselves back, basically. So it's really we're going to see a lot of developers looking at that as a technique to build residential housing. I believe it's just starting to get a foothold, but it allows a developer to really they have to put the money out, but then they can get that money back. And there's many large developers who are willing to do that.
Can you clarify, because you and I had a conversation about the township's portion of those taxes do come back to us, and I think that point's
Yeah.
really important.
So and so I would say this. So the statute allows what's called a community benefits agreement. And I just was on a Zoom call today in another community negotiating with a developer in the Brownfield Authority, a community benefits agreement. And what that does is for the township can say, fine, we'll do this project, you'll capture the taxes. But look, you're going to be adding all these new homes, population. We have police services, we have fire services, we have elections, all sorts of services we're going to have to provide to these new residents. We can't collect no tax for the next 10 years to do those things. Other entities that have much larger budgets, they have totally different financing models. But for the township, you can't add a bunch of new residences without revenue to service them. So when we do these community benefits agreement, which in this case, the case I'm just doing right now, we're requiring then the developer collects all this money from the capture, but then they're paying back the township its fire millage and its general operating millage. So the township can be still made whole in a deal like that. So it's really a good way. The township's not on the hook for anything under those circumstances. It's all developer financed. They get their money back, but then the township still gets their tax revenue through the community benefits agreement. And another thing that they can do in these new residential developments is they can offer housing for a cheaper price. So it allows you to do basically reduced housing. Maybe it's going to cost $400,000 to build a home in this area. If they offer a program where they allow people to buy it if they are within 120% of the median income in your township, it allows them to sell it at a reduced price. So the developer actually sells the house, say it's a $400,000 home, sells it for $300,000 to under the qualification. Then they can also capture back. So they lost $100,000 on that home. They can actually capture out of that tax capture the difference between that price that they should have gotten for the house and the price that they actually sold it for. So it provides some affordable housing opportunities. There's a lot of different things that could occur. And my point is really that these things may occur. There's new tools to occur without, say, the township bonding for a project or something of that sort. It is not, there's developers out there who have deep pockets, and if they know that they're getting their money back that they've expended on infrastructure, that's great to them. So we're going to see a lot more developments requesting those kinds of arrangements. But it also might provide affordable housing to the extent you need it in your community. Kind of moving on with the agreement, then there'll be a sharing of taxes between Lima and Sylvan Township. So if there is this development that goes on there, there would be a sharing of taxes. So once a project requires sewer and water in that area, it would require the two parties to share equally in the tax revenue that comes off of it. And if there's something that develops that doesn't require sewer and water, then it's not going to require any sharing of revenue. But once it does require sewer and water within the area, and it's starting to be constructed, then the tax money that comes in would be shared under this situation. Again, it does allow for special assessments and bonding to be mechanisms for projects. And I would just say this regarding bonding, that if you do a revenue bond, that type of bond can be done without a vote, but it has a right of referendum. So what happens is if you're going to bond for the project, they do a notice of intent to bond. And then the public has 45 days to file a referendum to force the bond vote to an election. So it is something that, ultimately can be put to a vote if the township were to go that route. I mean, I think the township board is very cognizant. I'm very cognizant of what happened with the 4.4 mills. And certainly we all will work hard to make sure something like that's never repeated. But, if for whatever reason there was, bonding to be used on a project, we try to make sure that the township and the public is properly protected. But ultimately, if the people don't want the bond, they can go and put it to a ballot vote and vote it down. So it's an option out there, but obviously an option that wouldn't be taken lightly if looked at. The agreement itself is for a 15-year period. And so it's 15 years. If the township and Lima want to extend it for another 15 years, they could. But at the end of the 15 years, the properties just go back to the original townships. So there's other 425 agreements out there, say with the city and so forth, that at the end of the 425 period, the property goes back to, in that case, the city or stays with the city. In this case, the properties just go back. We're really just trying to work together in a collaborative effort to see what we can do with these properties, see if they can develop. Nobody's forcing the owners to do anything. They're still the owners of their own property. It's just, nobody's saying you got to sell your property. Nobody's saying anything other than what you normally have with your property. It's just kind of the zoning for that property and trying to work together for a development project. But, if the owner wants to farm it, then the owner's going to farm it, and they don't have to sell it and we can't make them sell it. So it's a 15-year agreement if nothing happens. So if that's the case and nobody really wants to do anything or nothing comes to fruition in 8 years, the agreement just goes away. So we're giving ourselves some time to work through a project, get a project going, but ultimately, if there's no project to be had, then the agreement's just going to go away after 8 years. Certainly, if there's momentum somewhere along that process, it could be extended out by the parties, but otherwise it just expires at that time frame. And if there is a project again, it will go for 15 years unless the parties want to extend it for another 15 years. I really don't have any more introductory comments. I guess I can answer questions. So obviously, this is a public hearing now. You can get up and make comments about the 425 for the board to hear. If you've got questions, we can try to answer them to the best we can. Realize that we don't have a developer on board here. We don't know what the project would be. So a lot of those questions, it's just a framework for development.
Do we need a motion to open the public hearing?
I think you opened it. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So then we would move to any questions or comments that if you want to address those to Rob or you want to address them to the board.
Well, Madam Chairman, may I bring up a point of interest? Just for keeping compliant with Robert's rules and keeping our minutes clean, could I ask that any public comments be addressed to the board? And if there's any questions, yes or no could be answered directly with the question, but we could save Rob for the end to answer the questions that are addressed.
Fine. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's
Rather than getting into a conversation and going back and forth and that kind of thing.
okay.
All right. Any questions? Mike?
All utilities have limited capacity, and if at some point in the future we run out of capacity, I see where the extension is borne by the developer, but what happens in the case when at some point in the future we do reach capacity limits for both sewer and water?
Okay, thank you. Well, it seems to me, why would we not? I mean, we need to, I'll answer these as they come in. Yeah. So I'm going to let that, I'm going to let you answer that just because you have knowledge.
Yeah. So, that's a good question. Obviously, we don't have unlimited capacities to provide to whatever it is. So we don't know what the development might be. We have some capacity. Obviously, it's not unlimited capacity. Otherwise, you'd have to upgrade your system and do other things. Maybe a developer comes in and is willing to finance that with a tax recapture or whatever it might be. But, you know, I think it's a valid point to make sure that the agreement doesn't require that of the township. And that's why addressing Patrick's kind of point two in his email, I think, is to address that issue that we're not being required to put out any funds. If, you know, if capacity is used up, we have capacity now. If another development comes in and we give that capacity, then, you know, it might make this agreement moot if there's nothing, or a developer is going to have to come in and really pony up for a development.
But I think the point you're making is this does not, we're not bound to any, I mean, we're not bound to provide anything.
No,
We
it's-
have capacity, and so we're able to provide that, but it's not binding that we have to provide it.
Right, we're not going to have to upgrade our system because now maybe we've used some in other places in the past next 3-4 years, and maybe 5-6 years, a new development comes in here and they say, oh, we want all this. And we just don't have that much capacity to give them at that point.
Right.
Then it's not going to require us to upgrade our system to provide that. And if it needs a few tweaks to the language to make that clear, I can do that. And ultimately, this could we have a 30-day wait period after the public hearing anyway. We can tweak some language, for your next board meeting
Mhm.
for final approval.
Okay. Mike?
Kind of building on that a little bit, that was a question I had. Article 7, miscellaneous item number 1, that we're agreeing to extend the public sewer and water to the Chelsea Rest area upon request of the state of Michigan. So what happens if we get committed to extending water and sewer for a development, and then all of a sudden the state of Michigan says, well, we'd like for you to extend this, and then it kind of gets into that capacity issue again. Where does the obligation lie? Is it the state? Is it the developer? Again, it's the kind of the sticky widget of finger pointing things that we're going to get into later on or something like that. So just if there could be clarification of that, and kind of reiterate my other question about, do we know where the utilities, the water and the sewer are being serviced from? Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I can answer the first question. In terms of the rest area, that was, possibly an ability to get the state to finance some extension of the lines to bring services out to the rest area. But if not, neither party is responsible for the costs. It would be on the state to decide to finance that or not finance it. So that's really how it says we'll extend the service, but again, it's like we have to have the ability,
Right.
the capacity to do that. If we don't, they would have to, pay for those costs of increasing capacity. And if that's something that we need to clarify better in the agreement, I think that's something we.
So the state of Michigan would be another customer.
Correct.
They're not going to be able to knock people aside and say, we're the state of Michigan and we want this capacity.
No, they wouldn't.
Okay.
And they have very deep pockets when it
Right.
comes to funding. I've seen projects that they've, economic development projects, which could occur in this project area where they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on infrastructure development of the Blue Oval plant over in Marshall, the Goshen plant up north by Big Rapids. They've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on sewer, water, infrastructure development to supply those facilities because they want to bring in the economic development.
So we don't have to be concerned that we have somebody who is looking at property in the Lima Sylvan area, that we're talking with them about a project, and then the state of Michigan says, oh, we'd like to have water and sewer to our rest area. We don't have to throw this project away and do just because the state is requesting. They just have to get in line like everybody else,
And
correct?
then we'll provide the service, you know.
Right, but I think the point also is that they have funding. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's partly why we discussed this and why, the Lima supervisors discussed it with them, is because now that they're aware of this, there may be additional funding that we can utilize from the state.
Correct. Yep.
We're going to look at this from every angle we can to
Yeah.
be very assertive for any funding source through our reps, through
Absolutely.
grants, with that once, if we reach the point where we put this in place, we're going to look at everything we can, as far as funding.
It just sounded like there was concern that the state might usurp
Yeah.
a different project.
No.
Okay, so it's not a concern.
Patrick?
Okay, a few things. First of all, I like the idea of inserting a couple of words that Mr. Thal recommended, authority but not the obligation. That makes things a lot clearer just with those few words. Because that means nobody can hold us to that obligation. I'm about the capacity issue. It can be kind of tricky, and because we already have water and sewer districts and we have committed to provide water and sewer services to those areas when they get built out. And perhaps some of them, we don't even know how they're going to be built out exactly. So we have to look at capacity over and above our present commitments whenever we do this. Right? Because otherwise we overcommit ourselves, we build out this new development project, then somebody else wants more capacity and we have to upgrade our system for them.
Well, but we would not have to upgrade. We are only bound by what the consent judgments require.
That's-
Over and above that, we would not have to provide anything.
Very good point.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I would
'Cause
also-
they govern all of those properties in the water and sewer district, I believe.
I would-
Or at least the urban.
I would also say in those consent judgments, a lot of them had timeframes from which we were on, from which Sylvan Township was on the hook for making sure it had the capacity and upgrading the system on Sylvan Township's time. And the contracts I've looked at, I think have expired in
Some
that
of them-
regard,
That's part of.
at least some of
part of
them.
Why this has taken more time, because we have looked at this from every angle and, when we were able to look through some of these consent judgments with, together, we realized that there were some time constraints that have expired, which that means that we're beyond the time of committing some of those REUs in those consent judgments.
So just merely being within the water district doesn't necessarily mean we have to provide water for whatever gets developed there.
No, it's basically the water district's a planning concept, right? So the plan is to provide, these are areas where we would want to provide sewer and water. These are other areas outside the district where maybe we don't want to provide sewer and water. We don't want to extend out certain type of development. And so it's really a planning area. And if there is capacity in those areas, great. If there's not, then the developer is going to have to look at how to get the
Well,
capacity.
and
I see.
to comment on that as well, I think the point is we have those areas where we have planned for sewer and water, but if we are at a point where we are past, capacity and a developer wants services, then they have to pay for the upgrades
Even in the old areas.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
beyond the consent
So
judgment.
normally what happens is you build out your system originally and there's all sorts of special assessments, and different things to pay for that system. Once you have a build out system, extensions are normally going to be on a developer to extend those services to their properties, and capacity issues. If there's capacity issues, those are things for discussion, but never, the township is not required to increase the capacity. Those would be discussions with the developer. And sometimes the townships do pay a little bit for the, upgrade their systems, and then the developer pays a little bit to upgrade the systems. Sometimes it works that way. Other times you're just like, okay, well, maybe we use this new technique, that was passed in 2023, and use that to try to finance the infrastructure developments. But it's not a requirement of the township, even though it's in the sewer water area. That's just the area where we've planned. That's where we want to extend our lines and not further out.
But we're not committed to extending them.
Right.
Right. So, by the way, since it's public comment, public hearing time, I might as well just say from a personal perspective, I'm not against the township expending funds if there's going to be a development that generates a lot of revenue for the township, it's going to pay for itself. So I'm not necessarily against it. I'm just trying to be protective.
Right. I mean,
Based
we've
on
all,
what
we've
goes on.
all lived through this, Patrick, and your
right.
points are very valid. You know, we don't want any repeat.
If there was a bond referendum, I might even vote for it, depending on the situation, right?
The project.
But my last question is about that referendum. Exactly what kinds of bonds would qualify for the right of referendum, and how would the public exercise that? A petition with a certain percentage of the qualified electors in the township, I think?
Yes, I think it's
What kind of bonds?
under Revenue Bond Act. It's 45 days from the notice of petition, and I believe it's 10% of the people that voted for the governor in the last election. And so that is, normally, and I'm not bond counsel, I'm not a bond attorney. I've worked on plenty of projects with bond counsel and so forth, but, those are, they get a little bit detailed upon what type of bonds we're looking at, but in general, I know under the Revenue Bond Act, it has that provision in there of.
So I think to your point, Patrick, and I, valid points you brought up in your letter, that is the right of the people. No doubt. I mean, there's no threshold. It's the right of the people to ask for, that right of referendum if there's the board seeking a bond.
You're here.
Yeah. So I again, that adds a level of protection that, is important. All right. Any other comments or questions? Charlie? Just state your name, please.
Charlie Kahn, Swisher Commercial. Very familiar with the land and the process, and couple questions and clarification. So you're going to have a joint planning commission with representatives from both townships. How big of a planning commission will that be? And then also you mentioned that that's just a recommending body and that each municipality will have a final say. So what happens if you get approval from one board but not the other? I mean, that makes it very difficult for any developer to come through this planning process. So I just wanted some clarification and direction so I can direct people.
Yeah, so it is a little difficult because, it's going to be jointly zoned. So you do have to get consensus between the two municipalities on ultimately what is going to be going in there. And, to that extent, if there's non-agreement, then whatever the non-agreement on the one side, it's going to have to go back to the planning commission, probably for further discussion, public hearing, maybe further public hearing, and then further recommendations to the board. So that it's, that process is going to be, it should be collaborative. Right now, the boards are working collaboratively to do this. I don't see one board saying, no, I want it to stay ag or something. Both parties recognize the potential for these parcels, and maybe as a large parcel altogether. And I think, at this point, it's a collaborative project. I think both boards kind of understand what the purpose of economic development is. But, it can always, there's nothing that's perfect. And I can't say for sure that they'll be in lockstep. There won't be disagreement, but the process would be, if there is disagreement, going back to the planning commission, having further discussion about whatever that issue might be and trying to resolve it in a collaborative manner.
So both townships just updated their master plans, and you'll develop a new master plan for this area.
So yes, there'll be a new plan for the area and then a new zoning ordinance for that area.
Do you foresee that changing much with regards to what your master plan has been in the past, or if it's going to be something totally new? Have you had?
From Sylvan's side, I mean, we have, our master plan designates that area as commercial with, with mixed use, right? So I'm only speaking for myself. I don't see that changing.
Yeah. And then have you done any preliminary studies on how the utilities would get served to that area yet? Or in the past, have you done that? I don't think you have, but just asking the question. And then going back to the other questions, how much capacity is designated for this area? Do you have that at this point in time yet, or are you waiting for a proposal before you designate that?
Well, I think we have to wait for a proposal to see what we can designate for that area. And, how it's
Well,
extended, again, it's,
We have a contract with Leone for 1.2 million gallons a day for sewer, and we're below that substantially. So there's capacity on that end. We know that with some of the REUs that have been designated in the past for water, that even some of those are no longer, we've
obligated.
obligated.
Right.
So that frees up a number of REUs for water too. So it just kind of depends on what the project is. You could, if it could be a large project that, you get the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, involved in it. They can, if it's something they're interested in, they can finance the infrastructure development extensions, and they have in numerous cases done that. I'm not saying that will occur, but it just depends on what the development is. If it's a mixed use, commercial and residential, maybe we can use the TIF tax increment financing to extend it out to the residential and then make use of the extended lines for the commercial facility. So there's a lot of different things we can look at. I think the boards are committed at looking at all avenues of how we can develop those parcels.
As an economic development area, that's been the focal points of our conversations, as the two boards. We understand the economic aspects of this, the development potential for this area. That's why we were pursuing this.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions? All right. Any comments from the board or questions for Mr. Thal?
I have a question about tax increment financing.
Okay, just a question. Is this the end of public hearing?
You could go ahead and close the public hearing and then we can discuss.
All right, then let's go ahead and close the public hearing at, time is it? 8:05,
8:02.
go to. Thank you, Doug, for keeping us on track. All right, so we'll move then to board comments. Sandy, I know you had a comment on TIF financing or
So TIF financing was originally just for brownfields. That's a question.
There's different avenues for TIF financing, but the main one was Brownfield Development Authority for brownfields.
So it's been 20 years since I've given it a thought. So if a developer uses TIF financing, then I can't remember, are they capturing all of the taxes, or who's capturing the taxes?
Yeah, so what happens is with TIF financing, it would be, so the developer is going to work on, their infrastructure development. There's certain recoverable costs under the Brownfield Act that they can get back. And so they calculate out whatever those costs may be. Like in this case, I was just working on their costs, the developer's costs were $20 million. When they build out, it's going to be an $80 million project. And so the $20 million is recoverable from the Brownfield Authority as a tax capture. So they work with the Brownfield Authority. And what happens is the Brownfield Authority is the one that actually captures the tax. So the township collects it all as the collecting body, pays it over to the Brownfield Authority, who then has an agreement and contract with the developer to pay them back. In this case I'm working on, they're paying them back over 15 years, maybe 12 million of the 20 million. So they're not getting it all back, but they're getting a substantial amount. When they started the project, they didn't know they could even do this. So to them, it's a huge windfall that, they priced it out that they were going to spend it all. Now they're going to get back $12 million towards that infrastructure development. So Brownfield Authority pays them over, say, that 15-year period. And then the developer gets the money, and we have basically this community benefits agreement with the developer. And that says, okay, once you collect the tax capture money, developer, you have to pay us our millage rate. So in that case, it might be $80,000 a year they have to repay back to the municipality or whatever it might be, depending on what your fire millage might be or general operating. But those are all negotiable things that you can work out before you agree to allow them to do that. These are things that are by agreement, you figure out.
That's pretty amazing that it's gone just from brownfield redevelopment. I mean, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah, it's a huge change in the law and it's just starting to get its feet under it. And I think developers are all gonna, and there's no size requirement on the development. Frankly, you could ask for that on an individual home that you built. Now, no community is gonna grant it. The only reason you consider granting it is if it's an impactful development that you want to see in your community. If it's something that you're not really thrilled with or whatever, maybe you don't, you're like, no, we're not going to support that. But if it's an impactful project, you would consider something like that. But interestingly, it can be even for a single house. You could build a house and ask for tax increment financing on it.
Well, I think part of the push is that the state wants more housing.
Yeah, it has to
Expanded it.
be, the threshold is that you need affordable housing in your community.
Mhm. Okay.
I just had one question. It would still be an option for this developer to have the city of Chelsea provide water and sewer, correct?
Yeah, so what happens is, we have this agreement in place. It doesn't stop us from talking to the city of Chelsea at all about a collaborative effort, but it puts everybody on the same playing field so that it doesn't stop the conversation. But that would be a conversation really with Sylvan Township and City of Chelsea if there were the need or desire or want to, maybe extend from one area from the City of Chelsea. But those would be negotiated things under the agreement. So what I would say is you don't have to take action tonight. We have a 30-day waiting period. Your next meeting is before the 30 days expires. We can make some revisions to the contract, circulate them back to you, and then you can put that out for your next meeting packet also. And I would intend to address some of these issues. To me, some things are clear to me, but I want it to be clear to anybody who reads it rather than just like attorneys
Sure.
getting in a fight over what
Right.
things mean.
I mean, these comments have
Yeah.
been really important.
Yeah.
Really important because the layperson needs to understand this as well, now and in the future. So that there's less bickering over,
Yeah.
an interpretation.
Right, it'll help
Clearer it
resolve
can
any
be, right.
issues. Yep, yep, make it nice and clear and that helps me understand maybe what wasn't clear and we can add a few things here and there to the contract.
Mhm.
I'll give you a red line version so you can see what was revised. Lima had their meeting last night. It went very well there also. They're waiting to take final action at their next board meeting. So whatever revisions, and some of that was like, if there's some revisions coming from Sylvan, they have the ability to incorporate those and we can get it all done.
Right. No, I think that is wonderful. All right. So I definitely support what Mr. Thal is saying. Table this until the next board meeting so that we can incorporate those revisions now that we've heard comments from the public and we've weighed in on it as well as we're all digesting this. All right, are there any other comments or concerns? All right, then I would look for a motion to table this agenda item for the next meeting.
So moved.
All right. All right, so we got a motion from Sandy Schultze, supported by Kurt. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, this agenda item is tabled until the next meeting. Thank you so much, Mr. Thal. Appreciate your time. Yeah.
Rob.
All right, so we will move on then to transfer of ARPA award to the Bush Road culvert. So we learned that the original ARPA funding had been awarded to the Sibley Road culvert, but then it was discovered that due to its length, they're considering it a bridge. So then the county looked for funding through the MDOT local bridge program, and they did get funding for that Sibley Road Bridge. So on our end, the county is asking for us to make a motion to transfer that ARPA award from the Sibley Road Bridge to the Bush Road culvert. So this is, they just wanted that from the board. And so once we've done that, then they will transfer that ARPA award over to the Bush Road culvert. So I would look for a motion then I have here to approve the transfer of the Washtenaw County Resources Commission ARPA grant funds from the Sibley Road culvert project to the Bush Road culvert project.
I'll move.
Hurdle second.
All right, so that motion from Doug, supported by Kurt. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Yes.
At the bottom, it says it requires an expenditure of funds.
Yeah, I mean, because there are funds on our end. When we approved this back in, which I included this January 12th of 2024, we were paying, I think, I have to go back and look at it. We pay 25%. So we do have funds that we will have to pay for this. That was
That's
part.
not additional to that. It's-
No.
Okay.
No.
Just wanted to make.
And yeah. Okay. Any other comments? All right, so I have that motion from Doug, supported by Kurt, for the transfer of ARPA award to the Bush Road culvert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries. We will then move on to the Township Hall and Water Treatment Plant Security Upgrade. So as everyone knows, after the break-in last year, that it's been really important for us to upgrade the security at the water plant. So we had been working with Guardian Alarm to update the security system there. We had a pretty hard time working with the last salesperson. So we requested a new salesperson, and he's been really, really wonderful. So one thing that he had suggested was we should make sure that the alarm systems at both the Township Hall and the water plant are the same. And so to upgrade, the Township Hall currently uses Total Connect as the operating system for the Township Hall. In order to upgrade the water plant to that system, it was going to cost $1,195 to upgrade the water plant to be compatible with the Total Connect system. If we went ahead and updated both the Township Hall and the water plant to alarm.com, which are very comparable systems, it will actually be less, and it will save us money for the monthly fee. So if we upgrade the Township Hall to alarm.com, the initial investment is $517 and the monthly fee is $20. We don't have it in here, but I think the monthly fee right now is $25. So that would decrease our monthly fee. And then for the water plant upgrade, go to alarm.com. Let me see where we are here.
Option 3, I think.
Yes, thank you. So option 3 then is for the initial investment's $395, and then the agreement is $20. So the savings, just trying to do math here. So if we if we upgrade both of them, so it's $517 for the Township Hall, $395 for the water plant, that's $912, which is less than the $1,195 if we upgraded the township or upgraded the water plant to Total Connect. So I think it's a good idea. We would save monthly fees. It's a less, reduced initial investment. We also have the option, we just had it on here for option 2, which is a keypad downstairs at the state police door, because what happens right now
there's no keypad downstairs, but a lot of times they will leave. So we leave because we work late. We don't know they're down there. And then they go out the door downstairs and then they set the alarm, but they leave so they don't hear the alarm going off. So I get the call. So, so at 2 o'clock, whatever, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So if we do add that investment, the $173, we would then put a key code downstairs. So also I have had a discussion with the post commander for the state police. He did visit here a couple of weeks ago and he asked me a question that was really important. He said, "Are we paying any money to stay here?" And I said, "I'm really glad you asked me that question because this was going to be a conversation that I was going to bring up soon." So that will be part of the discussion, just getting the bandwidth to talk to the state police to come up with some kind of an agreement so they're at least covering their costs. So I'm comfortable with making this, adding this $173 for that keypad now, even before I've worked on an agreement with them. I think in the past, when we upgraded the door, there was supposedly an agreement for $1,000 they were going to cover. I don't think that ever was collected. This was maybe 2 years ago. Remember, we kept talking about the door downstairs. So I don't think that was ever collected. So that will be part of my discussion with the post commander. So I am comfortable definitely upgrading the township hall and the water treatment plant for sure. It's less money, but then adding that $173 also for the keypad downstairs will just hopefully cut down on more of these false alarms because they would then be using the keypad downstairs. So we would then have the motion to accept options 1 and 3 of the attached Guardian quote to purchase and install new and or updated security system hardware at the water plant and township hall, including a contract with Guardian for alarm.com, system application, and quoted monthly fees. And then we have the optional action, which is a motion to accept option 2 as well, to add an additional security keypad to the MSP entrance at the township hall, which is down below.
I'd like to move for all 3 options, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so I have a motion from Doug to accept option 1, 2, and 3 as presented in the board packet.
Support.
Okay, so that is supported by Sandy. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion is approved to approve motion 1, or excuse me, option 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. I think that will, having both the township hall and the water plant on the same system will allow us, we currently thankfully now are able to access the cameras from the township hall. We did work with the with the IT company and the security camera company so that we can now access the cameras. So we are continuing to increase our security there. All right, then we will move on to update, expand, point and pay online payment services. And I will let Sandy give some background on that.
So I discovered pretty early of taking this job that we only were accepting online payment ability for planning and zoning fees and cemetery fees, which where I came from was highly unusual that that's where the effort was put because there's no invoice created beforehand. So you just get this email that basically says you've got money and then you have to track it down and you have to figure out, and Scott's got to weigh in and do the zoning compliance, and then I can go in and post the receipt. What I would like to do is expand that to utility billing and tax. It is super easy with those applications because we create the bill, we upload it to them, and then they basically do all the work, and all I have to do is every day go in and click a few buttons to journalize the receipts, and it's all taken care of. What the township agreed to in the past with Point and Pay is costing us $50 a month. So most months, we're lucky to get one zoning compliance for $100, and then we give up $50 to Point and Pay for that privilege, which I see absolutely no point in that, in doing that. It's crazy to me. So if we approve this, then that $50 a month goes away. And the convenience for our customers goes way up. So I can't see a reason not to do this. What I am going to recommend at the board level, unless somebody wants to really disagree with me, that we do it for this first year with no contract. It's only marginally more expensive to our customer.
So that is page 75. If you look at page 75 of your board packet, that is going to give you the current agreement. And then
It's-
in green, there are the
Yeah.
proposed customer fees, which tells you,
Yeah, so it's
Those-
only a 0.05% more that the customer would have to pay.
mhm,
But the reason I say I'd like to do it that way is because BSNA has recently launched their own payment platform. And there is another payment platform out there called Invoice Cloud. And so right now, I think Point and Pay is just trying to keep customers. They tell me that they have a contract with BSNA, so it's not like BSNA can just throw them out and not allow that service anymore. But there's no way for me to sit here and say for sure that a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract is a good way to go. So since it's such a nominal difference to to our customer, I think it behooves us to take a road of caution with proceeding.
mhm.
And they swear that they can have this up in time for the July tax bills and the July utility bills. So I think it'd be a really good option for our customers that want to take it.
Right. So I would agree with you, Sandy. I would support going with the no contract. I know, the percentage rate, it's 2.8% for the no contract plan instead of 2.75% for the 3-year contract plan or 2.5% for the 5-year contract plan. There's a pretty nominal difference. I would support going with the option 1, which is the no contract, knowing that BSNA, has this other option and seeing how that goes.
I'll
And-
move to approve option 1 of the marked up attached proposed agreement, contract term of 0 years.
Okay, so I have that motion from Kurt to approve option 1 with a 0-year contract. I have support for that.
Support?
Okay, that is supported by Doug
Uh,
and then any
Just have a,
discussion?
yeah, just have a question for Sandy. So this 2.8% is on the customer.
Yes,
Okay, so it's not any additional,
there's
Sure.
0 cost to the township to provide this service.
it sounds like there's no change to our accounting practices to adopting this, but it simplifies it in a way.
It simplifies it a lot. Yeah.
No, and I think it provides better customer service, allowing our customers and residents more options. All right, so I have that motion from Kurt, supported by Doug. Is there a comment from Doug? Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries. We will then move on to Township Hall roof, no action.
So just first an update on the roof. We've got a potential start date of June 9th. And Dexter Roof said it would be best for them if we closed the offices during their construction. because they'll be using the front of the parking lot. It's hard to say whether they're really going to start on the 9th or weather's going to delay them. That's a Monday when they start. So
How long do they say they're going to be? How long will it take them?
they didn't say. I would imagine, I could only guess it would take a few days.
I don't think we can we cannot close the township for a few days though.
Yeah. So they were saying that it would be best, it's not required, but especially when they're tearing the roof off, and there's nails flying everywhere and that kind of thing.
I mean, ideally, then what I would ask for is if they would start on a Thursday, we could consider, I mean, even if they started, I mean, we could consider earlier, a Thursday possibly, and then that would give them Thursday, Friday to do the removal.
Mhm.
If that
Yeah.
can be communicated to them,
Yeah,
to mitigate any kind of.
You
closure.
know, we can see how, when we get closer, if there's any delay, and then we can
Yeah.
see, but the color of the roof is going to be a mansard brown, which is a dark brown with a little bit of red in there. It pretty much matches our existing roof color right now. The gutters, as part of the contract, they're going to be 6-inch commercial grade. So they're going to be sturdier than what we have and be able to handle the water runoff from the metal roof. They'll be the color of the existing eaves. So we'll have that contrast between the brick and the roof as we do right now. And I think that was, so our existing contract includes snow cleats as required by code, which would be on the front of the building where public is accessing and parking. There's no snow protection on the other 3 sides of the roof. I'm recommending that we get either snow cleats or snow bars on the remaining 3 sides for an additional cost. That would protect our eaves, our gutters that we're spending thousands of dollars on from, if there's a heavy snowfall, that heavy snow can slide off and take the gutters with them. If the state police are walking around the building to the back, we don't want chunks of ice and snow falling on them. So it just makes a sense to protect our investment to add these.
Cost?
So I got the email, but bring it out here.
See it in the packet? I don't see a cost in the packet.
Yeah, I was waiting for his email and he sent it out the other day and, oh, here it is. Okay, good. So he says we would need an additional 173 cleats for the other 3 sides at $32 each. So there would be an addition of $5,500, $5,536. Or we could go with the continuous row of a snow bar around the 3 sides, and that would be just under $5,200 at $5,198 for the snow bars. So in the packet, I just put a little outline of advantages and disadvantages. I'm seeing an advantage to having at least 3 sides of our roof with the snow bars. They can actually do all 4 sides, and they would adjust our bid accordingly, making it a little less expensive if they do the snow bars. Snow bars are he's saying they're a little more effective at holding the snow from sliding than the cleats, but they're not as aesthetic. So homeowners, places where, they want their building to look curbside appealing, they would go with the snow cleats. But he said on commercial buildings, snow bars are a little more expected on those kind of buildings.
Especially if it's on the back and sides,
Yeah,
cleats on the front, right?
yeah. Well, we can go with cleats or a snow bar on the front as well instead of cleats, and it might save us $100 or something off the original bid. But then they would add on the $5,200 for the other 3 sides. So if we thought we'd be okay with a snow bar around all four sides, they can do that. But if we'd rather keep the cleats on the front, we can do that too. Does that make sense?
I mean, I understand the point is you don't want the snow flying off the roof.
Right,
These guards are going to do.
yeah.
I just don't know. I've never seen a snow cleat versus a snow bar.
Our office manager just had a metal roof put on and they have bars. It's just a bar a couple inches high that runs along the length of above the eaves.
I mean, I would support the bar in the sense of if it's functionally better.
Yeah,
If they're saying it keeps the snow from
it's
flying off the roof,
marginally better, yeah.
then I would support that just because it's a better function.
Yeah,
I mean, and again, aesthetically, it sounds like it's not like it. You're gonna drive up and go, oh my gosh, what is that?
right. And being a commercial building,
Right.
people aren't going to go, oh, disgusting.
Are they literally a bar that just like
Yeah, there's
didn't understand the pictures?
oh. Yeah, basically it's clipped to the roof. And it's a bar that stands up an inch or so.
So it keeps,
So it bites into the snow and keeps it just from sliding off.
yeah, and a continuous bar wouldn't look, I can't imagine that would look poor. It's just a little bar that runs along the edge of the roof.
Whereas the cleats would stand up, if they have the dimensions on here. But cleats look like that, and they'll be standing up staggered along the roof edge.
So those stand up as well?
Yeah,
I think the bar might look better. It's a continuous line of.
That's what I was thinking. If you got these little,
Yeah, so I would support bars all the way around. I mean, I think aesthetically, personally, it might look more, consistent.
mhm. And being,
less noticeable.
yeah, and it's dark, it would blend in with the roof and all that. Anyway,
The only question is, why didn't they bring this up in the proposal to begin with?
well, he threw in cleats just because he thought that we would find that a little more appealing. And it's the difference in prices.
Not the other three sides.
Right, right. Well, the other roof bids didn't include cleats around the roof, just one of the other bids was just for the front as well. So I'm bringing this up now because it's better to take care of this now than have it
Well,
at a later time.
I absolutely agree, and I'm not opposed to it. Least, I just
Not,
surprised that they didn't mention this in the process of going through this rather than after we, approve the contract.
I brought it up with him after the fact. Because we were going with new gutters. And I just asked him if in his opinion, would these gutters withstand a snow slide? And he said, you're going to be a lot happier with snow bars all the way around just because a big heavy snow slide could damage your gutters. I guess apparently not everybody gets those and puts up with the risk. So. But we did budget 110,000 with this. This would take us up to 101,000 with all the work done.
If we added snow bars all the way around.
Right.
Okay. All right. Did you want to make a motion?
So I'd like to move that we have Dexter Roof install snow bars on all four sides of our roof at a cost not to exceed $5,198 above their current bid.
You said the bid will go down because the cleats will be removed from the bid.
Right, they said they would adjust it, so it won't be any more than $5,198.
Okay, so I have a motion from Doug to install snow bars for all four sides of the roof at a cost not to exceed $5,198 above the current contract.
Support.
All right, so I have that motion from Doug, supported by Sandy. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries.
And I just, sorry, one other quick update was the profile I forgot to mention of the panels. So normally they're just flat, but I'm recommending, and there's no additional cost for this, but if you look at your handouts, our R1 at the top that's circled in red, it shows these micro ribs, couple in the center there. And he agreed that those would add some strength to the panel. So over time, they'd be more resistant to warping and distortion and that type of thing with heat and that type of thing. So I'd like to recommend that they go ahead and use that profile.
R1?
Yeah.
All for adding strength to the roof. Okay.
Well, that was all.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so the next agenda item, which is something we somewhat covered, was the Township Hall renovation and roof replacement closure discussion. So when we are just working with level contractors for the renovation, there was some discussion that we would consider closing the township for one day, possibly on a Thursday, while they're tearing with the initial tear out. Again, I want to mitigate any kind of closures that we're looking at. It's something we can approve next board meeting, but as we get closer and we're narrowing down on that time frame, I think that is a consideration for us to look at maybe a Thursday. The other day, figure out how to reroute through the back door, but it will be pretty disruptive the day that they're actually starting to demo. So I guess we can possibly consider that for the roof for that one day as well. But let's make sure we're doing it, a Thursday. Okay. All right. So then we added some items and I need here. So what we added then was consideration of the trust and agency amendments. So, sorry that was missed and not in the board packet, but you do have it. I did leave it in front of you. So with Sandy's help, we have gone down the rabbit hole with our trust and agency accounts. And, this has been the clerk's job to try to collect money for these trust and agency accounts, but it has been so challenging, had historically been very challenging to figure out these accounts. So what you have there are 8 accounts that are in arrears, and I think there are 2, one of them, actually there's 9 accounts. One is Chelsea Hillcrest, which is the Trupiano situation that is pending because we're going to go after him legally. But then under that, we have the St. Louis Center, Sylvan Crossing, the Finney project, venture testing, Consumers Energy. No, I'm sorry, it's not Consumers Energy. There's the Kellogg 268 Shoreview. There's the Mario 17778 Kavanaugh. With those, when Sandy tried to go back and figure out what was going on, these arrearages go back to 2019, 2018. And for us to try and go back and try to figure out what was going on, there were a lot of journal entries made to our accounting system with no explanation because there were issues with cash receipting. And, when I first stepped into the position as deputy clerk, what Woodhill told me was that the trust and agency accounts were one of their biggest concerns because of these issues historically. So they have never, the only one that we actually dealt with, which I was able to find in the minutes, was April 5th of 2022. The board did make a motion, and that was to pay $4,960 for venture testing. So that is the 18600 Old US 12 is venture testing. Just accounting wise, that was never taken care of. So that one is still in arrears, but we did make a motion to pay for that. And I believe that was because, they brought that commercial line under the road. And so there was some disagreement on who paid for what part of that. So that happened back in 2022, but it just was never cleaned up from an accounting perspective.
But the St. Louis Center, again, those arrearages go back, you have these you have the activity reports from BSNA. So, St. Louis Center goes back to 2019. That's when this arrearage took place. With the Kellogg, I'm just going through what I have in front of me. Let me start from the beginning. So what I have in front of me. So it looks like the Finney project, you have $693. That goes back to 2019 from whatever was happening. The St. Louis Center, as I said, that goes back to 2019 as well. And Sandy has tried to figure this stuff out, but you can't because there are a lot of journal entries made and nobody put any notes in the accounting in the BSNA, so we don't know. The Kellogg's, which was 268 Shoreview Drive, that has a $440 arrearage. The reason why that happened was because it took many months. The Kellogg's were trying to build a house, and with former staff, there was a lot of issues with the zoning department, and that pushed them out months and months and months and months to the point they had to downsize their home because they lost out on the interest rates. So then when Scott took over, he was able to fix this within a couple of weeks, but that involved Attorney Thal to come in and also weigh in. So there was that, there was the $440 from Attorney Thal. I don't think that resident should be bearing that cost because it was really because of issues on our side. The Mario, which was 1778 Kavanaugh Lake Road, there's a 48-cent discrepancy. I don't know why. I don't know what happened for accounting, but that's 48 cents in arrears. Venture testing, we just discussed, that was already voted on. Sylvan Crossing, again, there's $979, but this goes back, it goes back years. So what I would like to do is on these trust and agency accounts, which will, let me make sure I'm identifying them correctly. So I would look at St. Louis Center, Sylvan Crossing, Finney, Venture Testing, Shoreview Drive, and Kavanaugh Lake. I would like us, because we need to do this before this audit, that's why we wanted to bring this up in this meeting. We're not looking at tens of thousands of dollars, we're looking at, $900 here, $1,300 here. I would like us to write those off because I think there were many issues with our accounting in the past. And we have if we tried to collect on these, I think there are some statute of limitations as well. And I think it would be futile for us to try and go back and collect for some of these arrearages. But we do need to, as a board, decide to write these off. That way we can have that clean slate with our trust and agency. Sandy's already working we're completely reorganizing the way that we are processing these trust and agency accounts. We do have two of them in arrears. One is from Chrysler and also from Montane Trail, but Doug and I have had a discussion about that, so we are pursuing that to bring those up to a positive balance. So that's where we are with that. It's just, I think we just need to clean this up once and for all so that we can move forward and we can go into this audit, letting them know, as Sandy and I talked about it, we either need to agree as a board to write these off, or we need to show the auditors that we are pursuing payment.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yeah, I would look for a motion that we would write off St. Louis Center, Sylvan Crossing, Finney Project, Venture Testing, which is 18600 Old US 12, Kellogg's, which is 268 Shoreview, and Marial, which is 17778 Kavanaugh Lake Road.
Well, I move that we write off the accounts mentioned.
Okay. Thank you.
Second.
Right, so I have that motion from Sandy and supported by Doug. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 We'll say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. This is
This is going to put us, again, continue moving us in the right direction so that we can go into the audit, cleaning this stuff up. All right, so what else, Doug? I need to go back and look at,
Recording secretary.
no.
Or the waive.
Yes, the wave invoice. So we have removed the wave invoice. So we have invoice for wave and the recording secretary. Yes, okay.
So I would like to move to pay waive their invoice amount of $10,000 for transportation services provided to our township for 2025 as detailed in the waive presentation and board packet of March 11th, 2025.
I have that motion from Doug
Support.
and supported by Sandy. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, then we'll move on to consideration of a recording secretary for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, so our zoning administrator, Scott Pacheco, sent an email saying that nobody on the ZBA wants to be the secretary and take the minutes. The zoning board had asked if they could have the same rights as the other commissions and have a professional service record their minutes. I checked with Dodie Latuzik, who's our current recording secretary for the Planning Commission, and she would be happy to be their recording secretary as well. So I would like to make a motion that the board approve hiring, I guess, would it be, Dodie Latuzik to be the recording secretary for the ZBA at a rate of $26 and what is it? Whatever her current rate is,
Right.
and 8 cents or something like that per hour.
All right, so I have that motion from Doug.
Support. Pick one.
Supported by Sandy. All right, any discussion?
Fee schedule, would we change that at all?
We're working on the fee schedule. We're doing a complete overhaul of the fee schedule. That's been part of our discussion.
Sounds like about another $50 on the fee schedule.
I mean, we don't have a lot of ZBA meetings now that we've, changed some of our ordinances. We have
Okay,
very few.
that's all, only comment I had.
Okay, anyone else? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Goodness, all right, well then that concludes the business portion of our meeting. So we will move on to the second public comment. If you would like to please stand up. You have another comment?
Cindy Jabara, Sylvan Township President. The discussion about arrearages reminded me about something that I thought of when I was reading through the documents that brought me in today with regard to this 425 agreement and potentially what we're going to see back from an engineer. Is that what we're waiting for? An engineer is going to be giving us the quote for what it's going to cost to go underneath the freeway for the water. So the arrearages discussion reminded me of the first thing that I thought of when I was considering this all was that costs can sometimes just get away from you, right? Little things here and there. And then, you forget, it gets entered in the wrong place. I mean, things happen, but they add up, they start snowballing. And so as far as, and I wish I would have thought about this when Thal was here, but what I'd like to have in everybody's mind is, who's really going to pay for that from where our water tower is currently to underneath, where does that agreement start and who's really going to pay for that? Does Lima think that we're going to put the water underneath and get it to their properties? I mean, what is everybody's understanding? So moving forward, that's kind of the thing that I'm thinking about with from the very beginning, from the location and getting it to wherever it needs to be, because there's a lot of steps, right? People might think, oh, you're going to get the water to the property. Well, it's got to come from here to get to there and then go under there. And so all of those little things, I just want us to be really mindful of. And I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, at this point, it sounds like that 425 agreement is just a very general framework. But at what point, do we really need to drill down?
Well, just to answer, because looking through our ordinances, which are very, very important as well, when you look at the water ordinance and the sewer ordinance, both of them are very specific. So for instance, 6.1.8 of the water ordinance says the total expense of extending water shall be borne by the benefited property owners in accordance with provisions of a contract or by special assessments levied by the townships in accordance with state law. Similar verbiage for the sewer. I mean, it's clear even in our ordinances that any extension of
Okay.
this system is going to come down to the developer for that property. So, you see that in our ordinances, you see
Right.
it in the 425, we're very cognizant of what's happened and we do not want a repeat.
Right.
These decisions are very complicated and
Sure.
thinking about them from many different angles, but protecting the taxpayer is paramount.
Yep. Thank you. Just wanted to bring that back.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. All right, anyone else? None from you, Patrick? All right, and we will move on to Board of Trustee comments. My only Trenda, you had brought up the road on Jerusalem and Sylvan. We need to do a lot better in general with our roads. That is why we've had discussion of a local roads advisory committee, and I've been talking with other township supervisors that have them in place to try to understand how they're organized. Most of our paved roads outside of the county roads are in terrible shape. And we need to start looking at what options we have. I mean, you can go down Glacier Road around the lakes and it's not good. So we look at Mushball Road, you're looking at a lot of these paved roads. That is where we are going to have to make some hard decisions in the future. But what I want to do is I want to bring our residents together as a local advisory committee to make some recommendations, to do some research, to figure out what our options are. It needs to come from the residents. So I've had some people come in that I've spoken with, but I want to make sure I have a charter in place. We need structure within that committee, and I just haven't had the bandwidth to get that together. Because I want to do it right where, there's structure around what we're wanting from that committee. But our roads are,
The county puts together a plan for Sylvan Township.
yes.
Have you seen that plan?
She would not have seen the one though where they talk about
I
like.
can get you a
10-year
copy of that. Show you what the road commission is thinking.
what their plan is for 10 years or 20 years. I mean, we have a lot of local paved roads, more than some of the surrounding townships. So and they're costly. They're very expensive to maintain and they haven't been maintained. And so that's why you're seeing Sager Road where they can't chip seal it anymore and it has to be. But what's really interesting, because I've spoken with the county, they have a new way of paving that they have done in other areas of the state. Instead of grinding the road and pulverizing and putting that laying down a complete new road, they actually now go over the old road surface. I think it's called it's not cold patch.
No,
but
it's cold mix
cold mix.
rather than the hot mix.
So they're actually utilizing the old road base and going over it. And they have found that it kind of moves with our weather better. So they are looking at potentially on their cost, going somewhere in the township and kind of laying it down to see how it wears. Right. But right, they're trying to figure out where it would have, it would have good, as I've said, it needs to be somewhere where you're going to have traffic, some good traffic so that it can't just be, it's wearing good, but it needs traffic. So that's the discussion we've had with the foreman. I know. Yeah. So we do have some decisions to make and our roads need to be addressed. Okay. All right. Any other
It's,
comments from the board?
so again, I'd like to just see if the board, somebody can follow up with the library about how they're being impacted by this executive order they're bringing up. So, okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up is a policy that was adopted back by the board in 2019, being the FOIA coordinator. It was regarding a policy for FOIA and obtaining our tax records. And it was calling it the enhanced access policy, but the way it's worded, it's not describing an enhanced access. And it's actually, the way it's worded, it could be illegal, or, it's not mandated by, or not allowed by law. And so I'd like us to visit at our next meeting, this policy, and perhaps I had Thal look it over, and he thought perhaps we'd want to get rid of that policy. So,
Okay. All right. Any other comments or concerns? Goodness, thank you all so much. All right, then I would look for a motion to adjourn
So
at,
moved.
what time is it? We're looking at here. 8:55. So I have a motion from Sandy to adjourn at 8:55. Supported by Sandy as well. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned at 8:55 PM.
You didn't ask for opposed.
Nobody's opposed. Nobody's opposed.
All those opposed?
I want to allow it.
You're opposed. You have to stay overnight.
Patrick? Patrick, thank you for putting so much into this. Paul and I had a
Yeah.